Yo, good evening, everybody. How you doing? Today we're gonna finish up on chapter 2 of Outwitting the Devil. Now, the thing about this, as you guys know, that I said that chapter 1 and chapter 2 are going to be the only chapters of this book that we will dive deep into that will be here on this medium. The rest of them, of Outwitting the Devil, the deeper aspect, the breakdown, the parts of it that really can change your life, change your future, change the way you live, change the way you think, change the way you breathe, change everything, every aspect about you, change the way that life gravitates towards you, is all going to be on my Patreon. So I hope you guys will join me over on Patreon for the remaining of the study of this book. If you're looking at it, today is January 4th, 2018. So depending upon when you're looking at this, videos may have already been made, some have not. Now, for my one patron who is reading the book ahead of me and asking me questions, slow down. But no, I think I'm glad that she was asking questions. Actually, it spurred me to go over the chapter again before I actually shot this video. So here's the thing. Some people will read this chapter, chapter 2, and just sum it up in one part. The title of the chapter is A New World is Revealed to Me. And we're talking about Napoleon Hill. Now, he's at a state where he is basically, what people would say is, he is walking on faith right now. He went out to start the manuscript, to get things going, to move in the direction of his purpose, and he really stepped out on what many would just say he stepped out on faith. He's walking by faith and not by sight. And many people would just categorize it as that, leave it there. They could read this entire chapter, and all they would get out of it is walk by faith, not by sight. That's it. But there's a formula at the end of this chapter which breaks down the entire chapter, but you're going to have to wait towards the end of this video before I give it to you. Just the way it works. But here's the thing. Napoleon Hill in this chapter does talk about having absolute faith, that he has so much absolute faith that the money will be forthcoming, that he could see it already in his possession. So by seeing it already in his possession, what he's doing is creating the mental imagery that the universe can't help but to facilitate. Now, I know if you've read Think and Grow Rich, which is his most famous book, he talks about that, mental transmutation. If you were with me on the videos about the Hermetics, when we talked about the law of mentalism, which is broken down into 4 videos, you know, mental transmutation being the first video of the law of mentalism, we talked about how the mental images that you create in your mind, but the ones you have absolute belief in, absolute faith in, absolute certainty that this is what it has to be, will be, must be, when you are in that state of absolute, then that's when you become resolute. I know we make our New Year's resolutions, but this is when you truly become resolute, because there is no plan B. There is no other way that it could turn out. It must turn out this way, or as he says later on, it is the seed that germinates into something. Maybe it doesn't fully pan out that time, but it's a seed, and if that seed is germinated, it continues to grow. But I don't want to go too fast. So he also said that as I regained my consciousness, the name Albert Pelton came into my mind. The reason why I underlined that one is because his instinct, his consciousness, his mindset, his third eye, his sixth sense alerted him that he needed to go through his mental Rolodex of all the acquaintances that he knew of to figure out who could help him. Now, he didn't know who exactly, and it wasn't like this guy was somebody that he had like intimate contact with. This was just somebody he had a brief business dealing with, but it was that person that his instinct told him to call. Now, the question that was asked me is the other self, because this is who communicating to Napoleon Hill at this point, is the other self his instinct? When I will have to answer it this way, based on what he wrote in chapter 2, the other self, the beginning aspect of it, the skin layer, the earth crust part of the inner self, the other self, is his instinct, that basic thing in your gut. When we talk chakras, when we get later into studies of chakras, that would be like the gut brain. You know, we have our heart brain, we have our mental brain, but we have our gut brain. And this is scientific. We have mental synapses in our stomach that work the same way as the synapses in our brain. That's why we have that gut feeling. That gut feeling, that gut brain speaks to you. That's the beginning part of your other self. But your other self goes much deeper, and but you do have to cultivate it stage after stage after stage in order for you to fully work with your inner self, your other self, your consciousness, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it. Because what he does say over and over again is that he's not exactly sure what that other self is. He can't exactly explain it. It's not something that you can say by you can define. It's kind of like if you saw the videos on the law of mentalism, we talked about the all in all, that at all points, the all can never be defined. It's unfathomable. So even your inner self, the other self, the divine spirit inside of you can never be fully defined. Even though we are a finite brain and even our spirit is finite within itself, it still is at a level that we at this consciousness cannot fully understand or define. So where we have that within ourselves, we have that within the universe as well. But it is the more contact that we have with that other self, with that infinite being inside of us, that finite infinite being inside of us, that we begin to work in the flow of the universe. And that's the big thing here, is working within the flow of the universe. So one of the things that happened when he worked with this guy Pelton, the guy decided that he was going to print all of Napoleon Hill's books that he had at the time frame. The guy says, and Napoleon said, I did not ask him at the time what caused him to reach a decision to publish my books before he had read the manuscripts. Here's the thing. Napoleon Hill the Pelton just on instinct of his own, on his own other self said, I'll publish this book. I'll give you the $25,000 and a royalty to publish this book. Now understand, we're talking about the 1930s. $25,000 in the 1930s is like, I don't know what the economics would actually be, but I'm sure it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000, maybe $500,000 in today's world with today's inflation and growth and all that kind of stuff. But it's not a cheap sum. It's not a cheap sum. But what also, this gentleman had plenty of connections of book buyers all around the world at the time. So without even reading it, and Napoleon Hill didn't question it. And that's another thing. I told you guys before, when our gut brain tells us something, our heart brain can emotionalize ourselves out of it. Our mental brain will reason ourselves out of it. And this is our outer self, not the other self, not the one that we need to work with. This is the fear-based self, the one where fear sits on the throne. The fear-based self will reason your way out of what the faith-based self, the belief-based self, the conscious-based self, the accurate thinking-based self is telling you to do. So the universal, we're going to call it the universal self. You know, the fear-based self and the universal self. That's what we're going to call this, so that we have a clear distinction. All right. So, but one of the things that he said is that your only limitation is the one that you set up in your own mind. You see, if you set the limitation that the people who can help you are only these sets of people, the people who can help you are only the ones that you can consciously think of have the resources or have the ability or the interest, or you have the closeness to them, are the only ones who can help you, then you're limiting what the universe has for you. You're limiting what other people who you may not know them personally as well, but they have a sense about you or about what you're looking to accomplish, and you don't know if they may be the right fit for you, the right help for you. So we don't limit ourselves, and this is something we have to look at in every aspect of limiting ourselves. Right now, people are getting ready to, they're trying to work out, trying to get healthy, right? But if you limit yourself to only being able to go to the gym, then you are taking away the idea of you being able to get healthy by working out at home, get healthy by working out in the park, get healthy by working out in your apartment complex, your neighborhood. You're taking away all other avenues to gain the same measure of success. So we have to take off the limitations and just say, I am going to be I am a healthy person. And if I am a healthy person, I must put myself in the environment of a healthy person. Therefore, whether I go to the gym, whether I do it at home, whether I do it in the park, whether I do it anywhere, wherever I do it, it is going to be done. The food is going to be taken care of. So whatever it is, we have to take off the limitation, because limitations are shackles that keeps us enslaved. Now he said that I'm not sure that I understand just what the other self is, but I do know that there can be no permanent defeat for a man or woman who discovers it and relies upon it. My other self presented me with, and that's the thing. There is no defeat unless you allow the fear self to get back on the throne. When the fifth self get back on the throne, all of a sudden you have permanent defeat. Now you're stuck, and then you get back into that rut. Now you can't move forward. But when you allow the other self, the universal self, to continue to guide you, to lead you, even when you have setbacks, they're just that. They're just minor setbacks. They're lessons to learn to move you even further along the pathway. And see, because of that, now he knew that Pelton had some things to handle. He had some things to do. He gave him a royalty, but his other self at the same time presented him with an idea to which to solve his immediate financial problems, financial situation. So he developed an opportunity to do some sales training, basically. And that sales training was able to keep him afloat, keep things doing, and everything moved exactly. He called the right people. The right people said yes. Well, the right people connected him to the right people, and the right people said yes. And then with the right people saying yes, it enabled him to make a sum of money that was able to carry him until he started receiving royalty checks, right? He says, my other self had not disappointed me. The money that I needed was in my hand at the proper time, just as I had been assured the money would be. And that's the thing, all things in its proper time. I know, like I said, some people are just going to walk out on this video and just say, just walk by faith, not by sight. But see, there is activity that occurs. You see the activity? You see what's going on? His other self told him to do something, told him to move, and he moved. And he had to be obedient to the movement. It's not about sitting back and waiting for something to come to you, but it's for you to be told and know where to move, where to go, what functions you need to take in your life, what activities to take in your life to move you forward. Your other self, your universal self, will always tell you to move it, to get moving. Because here's the thing. The law of vibration says that all things vibrate, all things move. The law, and since all things are vibrating and all things are moving, then they're going up and down the polarity scale. So all things are changing. Change is inevitable. So in order for you to change your life, you have to move in a different way to make that change happen, to move you up the polarity scale. You see how that works? One of the things you're going to learn here is that Napoleon Hill is speaking in code often, but he's talking about the Hermetic laws and many of the things that he's discussing. That's why the universal self is much bigger than just instincts. It's much bigger than just soul or spirit or, you know, the sixth sense. It's a culmination of all those things based on natural law. Because in the other video, he said, you know, in chapter 1, he said nothing that he does, nothing that he had done is outside of natural law, but some people will call them miracles as if they are outside of natural law. All of this is inside of natural law. He started thinking differently. He started acting differently. And the people gravitated to him who were the right people that were attracted to him. They were the right people to help him move forward, to move everything forward, to move it in a direction, because now he's functioning in his purpose, right? So he says that the other self follows a precedent, recognizing no limitation, and always finds its way to accomplish its desired ends. It may meet with temporary defeat, but not with permanent failure. And same thing. He repeats this over and over again in this chapter of how the other self will just keep you moving, keep you going, and no defeat is permanent unless you allow it. Unless you allow it, you have to continue to move. Never let that other self meet with permanent defeat, because then failure, your failure self, gets back on the throne. All right. So he said that sometimes the failures are blessings in disguise, and we've heard this before. But the problem is most people are expecting the failure all the time. We can't expect the failure. We always must expect the greater result, and even the greater result beyond what we can see, beyond what we can fantasize. But sometimes when it does happen, when you do have what is called a setback, when you do have that, you have to get back, you have to recognize that what is the lesson for me to learn here, and how do I keep going forward? He says that there is a solution for every legitimate problem, no matter how difficult the problem may seem. If you remember the first chapter, he said that he walked. On his first experience with his other self, he walked, looking for a solution, asking for a solution, demanding a solution. The second time, he's walking around the school all night and was intent upon not leaving that place until he got a solution. Now, Tony Robbins says a thing. He said that you should never leave the place of getting something done without getting it done. Jim Rohn said the same thing, who was Tony Robbins' instructor. Jim Rohn learned it from Earl Schull. Earl Schull learned it from Earl Nightingale. Earl Nightingale learned it from Napoleon Hill. You see the flow. It is that you never leave the point of getting something done without ensuring that you have achieved that thing. You have gotten something done towards moving you in the direction that you're supposed to be moving in. It is that thing when you sit there and you allow distractions to take you away from your task. You allow phone calls, you allow Facebook, you allow YouTube, you allow movies, television, you allow every other distraction to take you away from the thing that you're in right now, that moment of getting things done, and you cannot allow that. All right? But when you do have temporary setbacks, recognize that. And he says, mind you, I did not say that when you do have a temporary setback. Wait a minute, I'm messing it up. All right, so mind you, I did not say that the full-blown flower of success, but the seed from which that flower may be made to germinate and grow. There is no exception to the rule. The seed of which I speak may not always be observed, but you may be sure that it is there in one form or another. Meaning that you may not always succeed. It may not always go your way, but when it doesn't, recognize that it is a seed to germinate. It is something that you continue to work through. That it may not bloom. Your first time out the gate may not bloom. It may not be, amazing for you. So you have to keep going. It's kind of like a music artist. The first CD hit smash. Second ones, sometimes they're crappy, but then they come back with a third, get the smash again. Maybe they don't. They come back with a fourth. But they have been germinating a seed of music to continue to flow, to continue until they get it, until it blossoms into something. They don't sit back and say, oh man, that CD didn't go over well, so I'm done as an artist, I suck. No, they keep going, they keep writing, they keep working, they keep producing. You have to keep producing, keep moving. But he says that this would seem to justify the conclusion that the infinite intelligence has a plan or a law by which it hurdles men over many obstacles before giving them the privilege of leadership or the opportunity to render useful service in a noteworthy fashion. But in this aspect, what he's talking about is the fact that even though you may not see the plan, and I know you heard this in church, synagogue, mosque, you may not know the plan, but God knows the plan. He's pretty much saying that. Infinite intelligence knows the plan. It knows the vibrational pathway to get you to your success. It knows what you must learn in order to get you to your success. It knows what obstacles you have to overcome to get you to your success. If it did not, then it wouldn't be infinite intelligence now, would it? It wouldn't be omnipresent, really. It wouldn't be omniscient if it didn't. So it has to be. It has to know that. And if you're following natural law, then you can't help but be in concert, be in tune with that. And the things inside you that you need to overcome, opportunities will come you will be presented with opportunities to do that. It's kind of like in that one movie, I forgot the name of it. But Morgan Freeman is playing God, and the guy's family leaves when he was building the ark, and he says that God doesn't, when you pray for patience, God doesn't give you patience, but give you the opportunity to be patient, to learn patience, to display patience. So if you say, I want to be more loving, well, God's not going to give you, the Creator's not going to give you, the universe is not going to give you love. It's going to give you the opportunity to love, right? And so you have to take it when it comes and then continue to go over any obstacles that may be presented in front of you in order to do that. And your other self will guide you. Your universal self will guide you. You just have to listen to it and just move forward. Things don't seem like they're working right, but if you trust in your universal self, then it'll keep going. You'll keep moving forward and you'll get to your desired destination. But you have to have definiteness of purpose in order to get there. I know that's actually throwing you into the actual book itself, but that's also spoken of in but actually all of his books. I was going to say Think and Grow Rich and the Laws of Success, but that's in all of his books, and to be honest. So he does say, I repeat that I do not know exactly what the other self is, but I know enough about it to lean upon it in a spirit of absolute faith in times of difficulty, when the contrary reasoning faculties of my mind seem to be inadequate of my needs. That there is something infinitely worse than being, So, I was skipping. Thing about it is, what he's saying here is that it's just, he's learned to trust it. You have to learn to trust this infinite self. And what you think may be horrible, what you think may be a horrible or worse situation may not necessarily be the worst situation. What I was about to read, that he talks about that There's something infinitely worse than being forced to work. It is being forced not to work. This is from the time of the Great Depression. You see, he grew up during that time frame. And imagine you want to work to provide for your family, but you're forced not to work. You can't work. Like, they're forcing you not to work. It's just not something that you're going to be able to do. You want to work, but they just forcing you not. You can't do it. Not going to provide it for you. It's just not there. You want to feed your family. You want to, take care of your needs, but you just can't because the opportunity is not there. Well, that's a misery unlike a misery when people is forcing you to work. I'm not talking about slavery. That's different. I'm not talking about slavery. I'm talking about when you work at that job, you hate that job, and you got them, they hanging it over your head. They hanging things over the head to force you to still be there, to force you to stay there. That kind of force. Slavery. Not even gonna touch it, but not comparable. But so we're gonna keep moving on this chapter and understanding what the inner self is and how to trust it. He said that since the inner self took charge of me, I have come by useful knowledge, which I am sure I would never have discovered while my old fear entity was on the throne. The thing about that is that as long as you're walking in fear, you can never know your other self, your universal self. You can't have two on the throne. They don't cohabitate. It's the idea of good and evil in the scale of polarity. If good is here, evil is here. Absolute good here, absolute evil here. You can't be in two places at the same time. It just doesn't work. Either you're sitting, or you got fear on the throne, or you got confidence on the throne. Your fear self or your universal self. One of the two. As long as your fear self is on the throne, you can't see the universal self. You can't function with the universal self, because every time the universal self speaks, you're not going to hear it. You're going to reason your way based on fear out of it, emotionalize your way based on fear out of it, listening to other people who give you their fear out of it. So you have to recognize even other people, fear cells can put your fear back on the throne. He didn't say that, I'm saying that. So it's best that you would overcome this. It's best for you to overcome this, for you to not walk in this fear, but for you to walk in this what he calls faith, but to walk in it. Ooh, there's a lot to cover, but I want to get you guys there. And I know I'm sounding a little bit repetitive, but I need you to understand that. That's what it's really about. But he's saying that in order for you to know this universal self, that you cannot be steeped in greed, you cannot be steeped in avarice, envy, or fear, that you have to allow those things to be outside of you. If you are walking around and you want to step on the next person's neck, you're not going to be able to know that universal self. If you're walking fearful of what people may take from you, you won't know the universal self. If you're fearful of what others will do to you for whatever you do, then you won't know the universal self. You're scared that you may lose people because you're following your passion. You can't know the universal self, because no matter what you do, no matter how you do it, you're operating based on fear, greed, envy, or any of those other things. You can't know the universal self. So what you're following is not the path of the universal self. You may look like it, but it ultimately will continue to fail there. And remember in chapter 1, I said you'll come back to that same position over and over again. Just like he kept coming back to the same position. He had the 17 laws of success, but he kept coming back to that same position, even though he had the laws. Because why? Without the universal self, he could not apply those 17 laws. Those 17 principles of success, he could not apply them because he was not functioning under the universal self. He was functioning under the fear self. And that fear self kept him from actually achieving happiness, success that he so truly desired. And that's the other thing. You can desire it, but if you're operating in fear, your desires are mute. They're silent. They can't be heard. They won't move you forward. So we got to move away from that. But he said his other self had taught him to concentrate upon his purpose and forget about the plan by which it is to be attained. So you've been taught that before. Don't worry about the plan, just focus on it. Now this is not that you can't have a plan, but as you see the plan unfold, you continue to move with it. As you see the next day, you plan for the next day. But if your internal self, your universal self tells you to take a different route, take the different route. Don't sit there and wait for it. But the plan must be transmuted through self-effort and action. You have to move. There's no way that this plan is going to work without that, without action. It has to be action. Now, at this point, he starts talking about prayer. and how prayer works, and how prayer, he used to pray one way, but he had to change the way he prayed. He had to change the way he prayed. Now, I don't pray, so to speak. I meditate. I meditate and have thought-provoking conversations with the universe during my meditations. So in the same light, my way of meditating is his way of praying. And in that, I cannot meditate with the hope and the begging. I have to meditate with the universal self of knowing. And that's what he's saying. You cannot pray, without knowing. You have to pray in an affirmative. You cannot pray begging. You have to pray in the affirmative. You cannot pray out of disdain either. You have to be thankful. Give thanks for where you are, for what you do have, showing gratitude. Because when you show that gratitude for what you do have, for the vast fortune that you have, and show appreciation for it, the universe likes to give you more. It's kind of like when you are thanking your parent or thanking your family members, you thank people constantly, then it makes them want to give more to you because they actually like receiving that thanks. Not saying that the universe has emotions like that, but it's just the way it works, because like things are attracted to other like things. Oh my gosh, I wish you guys had seen the law of mentalism. Law of correspondence, the different planes of correspondence with the elemental mind, the element mind, the plant mind, of how like things, how even elemental things have their likes and dislikes, their repulsions and their and things that attract them and things that repulse them. Oh my gosh, this is exactly what he's talking about. How when you show gratitude, things that like gratitude, we have the elemental mind, the plant mind, the animal mind, the human mind, the spirit mind. Things that like gratitude will be they'll gravitate to you. You're causing that attraction. You're touching on the spiritual level of gravity. I know you probably never heard that, but the spiritual level of gravity. That gravity is not just a physical force, but it's a spirit being as well. So he's talking about that in his way of praying, that showing that gratitude, but also in the affirmative, taking charge of your prayer, taking charge of your meditation, demanding from your mind the thoughts to be resolute in what it is that you are purposed to achieve. That is how he's praying. Now I can read every little aspect of what he said about that, but there's this one part. Every individual have the power to change his or her material and financial status by first changing the nature of his or her belief. Changing the nature of your belief will change your life. In the book, later on, he's going to talk about the devil may be having his way with you and how you are and how you can ignite your other self. To not only conquer the devil, but in your own life, but to also empower your other self to achieve your greatest success. That's what happens in the book when you learn how to supercharge your thoughts, how to supercharge your mind, your prayers, your meditation. When you learn how to supercharge those things, you develop that ability of mental transmutation backed up by activity, by your action. This is what Edison did. This is why Edison became who he became. There were far many greater people, greater inventors than him, but Edison never understood what defeat was. He never allowed defeat to be part of his life. No matter what happened, he was always moving forward and thinking that he can achieve what it is he wanted to achieve, that his team could achieve it, that he would bring the right people around to make sure that it was achieved. That was just how he was. Now, some people call this a sixth sense. Your sixth sense is just another term for developing another stage, another level of the correspondence, another plane of existence. It's just continuing to grow and develop the universal self, right? And the more you develop that universal self, the deeper you go into. Now, not deeper. Let me say the higher you rise to opening up your crown chakra would be the way that I would best express it for myself. You will open your crown chakra, which when you open that crown, you pop that crown chakra open. That's when you start touching source. That's when you start understanding source energy. That's when you truly understand. I know a lot of people say that, oh, source energy this, and I touch source energy. You may be dabbling in source energy, but I'm saying when it's fully popped open, when all the chakras are open, when all the energy is flowing, and you are like fully immersed in source energy, that is when you truly become a master and an adept to working universal knowledge, universal power, universal everything, right? That's when you just become a master at it. And it's not something that I believe many people ever actually do. As nice as it sounds, that people can just do it like that, I think it takes decades and decades and decades of study and practice. But as you learn and get better, you will be better. Now, I'm going to go ahead and give you this formula that they talked about, which is more than just walking by faith, not by sight. Is that he says that the formula is is basically combine your passion with your talent, and then seeking the right associations and taking the right actions are very important components for success. But it is when you combine all of these components with a strong faith in yourself and your mission that you truly have your personal success equation, which is passion. First, you have to do passion plus talent by themselves. You have to combine your passion and your talent first. Then you multiply your passion and your talent with the right association, and then multiply that passion plus talent with the right association with the right action, and then add to all of that your faith, your belief, your definiteness of purpose, your determination, the fact that you believe beyond doubt that this is what you must have, that this is what you have, that this is your true desire, that you're not in lack of it. When you come to that point, then that is when you become a master of creation. You become a master of attraction and mastering things coming to you that you desire. This is when you elevate your mental consciousness to the point where there is nothing that is not achievable within your life, within your understanding. So this is what he came to a realization of in chapter 2. This is a new way was open to him. Now, based on that, he began his interview with the devil, which now he learns how he's going to teach in the next chapters, and there's a lot of chapters, so that means there's going to be a lot of videos, how and different ways and different techniques of the fear-based self that sits on the throne, how the universal self can conquer it and never find itself in a situation of lack, nor ever be dethroned again, if we can learn this, and how we can do it on the larger scale of society. So I hope that you guys have enjoyed this second chapter of the book. Like I said, the rest of it will only be on Patreon. So I hope that you guys would join me on Patreon, and so that we can go deeper and deeper into it. And as you have questions, we'll be able to discuss these questions. Yes, and so to my patrons that I already have, please, let's continue with discussions about it, because it's not just about what I say and how I view it and what I've learned from it and what my universal self is telling me about it, but it's also about you discovering your universal self and you expressing what your universal self is telling you. Because we can only grow if we grow together. You know, like I said, associations, the right associations in concert with everything else. So I look forward to it. Join me on Patreon so that you can be a part of this study, because you know you got to free yourself to be yourself, because your greatness is non-negotiable. And this is your Coach Renz.